I always had a fear of being pulled over by a cop at night, alone on a deserted road. Little did I know that my deepest fear would come to life in a way I could never have imagined. It was a cold, moonless night when I found myself driving down a desolate stretch of highway. I was on my way back from a late-night business meeting, the only car on the road for miles. The silence was broken only by the hum of my engine and the occasional gust of wind rustling through the trees that lined the roadside. As I glanced at my rearview mirror, I saw the unmistakable flash of red and blue lights. Panic gripped me as I pulled over to the side of the road. My heart raced as I waited for the officer to approach my window. The man who stepped out of the car was dressed in a police uniform, complete with a badge and a holstered gun. His face was obscured by a pair of mirrored sunglasses, and he wore a menacing grin that sent chills down my spine. "License and registration," he barked, his voice cold and authoritative. I fumbled to retrieve my documents, my hands trembling. The officer took them from me without a word and walked back to his car. I watched him in my side mirror as he sat in his patrol car, his head bent over my documents. It struck me as odd that he hadn't asked for my proof of insurance or even told me why he had pulled me over in the first place. Minutes felt like hours as I waited for the officer to return. The darkness outside seemed to press in on me, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. I reached for my phone intending to call the real police, but it slipped through my fingers, falling to the floorboard with a loud thud. Suddenly, the officer's voice crackled over the car's speaker. "Step out of the vehicle, sir." My heart pounded in my chest as I obeyed, my legs feeling like jelly as I stepped onto the cold asphalt. The officer approached me, his grin widening. His eyes behind the mirrored sunglasses were cold and lifeless. "Turn around and put your hands on the hood of your car," he ordered. I complied, my mind racing as I tried to make sense of the situation. What had I done to warrant this? And why was this officer so unnervingly sinister? The officer began to pat me down, his hands feeling invasive and violating. I wanted to resist, to protest, but the fear coursing through me kept me frozen in place. As he finished his search, he leaned in close, his voice a low, menacing whisper. "You've been a bad boy, haven't you?" My blood ran cold at his words. This was no ordinary traffic stop. It was something far more sinister. I knew I had to get out of there, and fast. With all the strength I could muster, I lunged forward, knocking the fake cop off balance. I sprinted back to my car, desperate to escape this nightmare. I could hear the officer cursing behind me, but I didn't dare look back. I needed to find help and get away from this impersonator. I sped down the dark highway, my heart still pounding with fear. I knew I had to find a real police officer or a well-lit public place to seek refuge. My hands shook as I dialed 911 on my phone, desperately trying to explain the situation to the dispatcher. She assured me that they would send a real officer to meet me at a nearby gas station. As I pulled into the well-lit gas station, I was relieved to see a patrol car waiting for me. A real police officer stepped out, and I practically leaped out of my car, rushing to explain the terrifying encounter I had just endured. The officer listened intently, his face growing grave as I recounted the disturbing events. He assured me that they would investigate the incident and do everything they could to find the impersonator. He also advised me to stay in the gas station until I felt safe to continue my journey home. Hours passed, and the fear slowly began to subside as the reality of the situation sank in. The real police officer had been kind and reassuring, and I couldn't thank him enough for his help. But I couldn't shake the lingering feeling of dread and unease. Days turned into weeks, and the impersonator was never found. The police launched an investigation, but it seemed as though he had vanished into thin air. I couldn't help but wonder how many others had fallen victim to his terrifying ruse. I became obsessed with finding answers, scouring news articles and forums for any information about similar encounters. I discovered that I was not alone. Others had come forward with their own stories of fake cop encounters, each one more chilling than the last. The impersonator had left a trail of fear and confusion in his wake, and I couldn't rest until he was brought to justice. I continued to work closely with the police, providing any information I could remember about the man's appearance and demeanor. But despite our efforts, he remained elusive. The memory of that night still haunts me. I can't help but feel a deep sense of unease whenever I see a patrol car in my rearview mirror, wondering if it's a real officer or another impersonator. My fear of being pulled over by a cop at night has only intensified, and I find myself constantly looking over my shoulder, haunted by the disturbing encounter that changed my life forever. In the end, I learned that darkness can hide the most sinister secrets, and that even those who are meant to protect and serve can become the stuff of nightmares. The impersonator may have escaped justice for now, but I will never stop searching for the truth and hoping that one day he will be brought to justice and the streets will be safe once again. The night was dark and stormy, the rain pounding on the roof of the bar like an angry drumbeat. I had been nursing my drink for hours, trying to drown my sorrows in a sea of alcohol. The world outside had blurred into a mess of wet streets and distorted headlights as I stumbled out of the bar, barely able to stand. My vision was a haze of rain-soaked confusion as I staggered down the desolate street. My phone buzzed with concerned messages from friends, but I ignored them, lost in my own misery. I was alone and drunk, and the world seemed like a cruel and distant place. As I stumbled along the deserted sidewalk, I saw a pair of headlights approaching in the distance. My heart sank as the car slowed to a stop beside me. I glanced over expecting to see a taxi, but instead I was met with the ominous sight of a black sedan. The driver's side window rolled down, revealing the silhouette of a man in a police officer's uniform. "Sir," he called out in a stern voice, "are you okay? It's a dangerous night to be out in this condition." Relief washed over me. A police officer had come to my rescue. I stumbled toward the car, grateful for the help. The rain soaked through my clothes as I reached the window. The officer's face was obscured by the shadows, but I could see the glint of a badge on his chest and the red and blue lights on the roof of the car. He seemed like a guardian angel sent to protect me from the stormy night. "Thank you, officer," I slurred, struggling to maintain my balance. I didn't know how I was going to get home. The officer's voice was cold and monotone as he replied, "Get in the car. I'll give you a ride." Relieved and still too drunk to be suspicious, I opened the car door and climbed into the back seat. The interior was dimly lit, and the rain outside continued to pour down in torrents. The officer pulled away from the curb, and we began to drive through the empty streets. As we drove, I noticed that something was off. The car's interior felt strangely cold, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I glanced at the rearview mirror and froze in terror. The man in the driver's seat was not a police officer at all. His face was hidden beneath a grotesque mask, a twisted, grinning mockery of a human expression. His eyes gleamed with malevolence as he stared at me through the mirror. "Who are you?" I stammered, my voice quivering with fear. He let out a chilling laugh that sent shivers down my spine. "I'm just here to help you, my friend." My heart pounded in my chest as I realized that I was trapped in the car with this deranged imposter. Panic surged through me, but my drunken stupor left me paralyzed and unable to react. I glanced out the window, trying to get my bearings, but the rain and the dark streets had become an incomprehensible maze. The man continued to drive in silence, the rhythmic patter of rain on the roof serving as a haunting backdrop to the nightmare unfolding inside the car. My mind raced, desperately searching for a way out of this horrifying situation. As we turned down a deserted alley, I knew I had to act quickly. I reached for the car door handle, praying that it would open, but it was locked. My heart sank as I realized I was trapped. The man in the mask seemed to sense my desperation. And he let out another chilling laugh. Now, there's no need for that. We're almost there. The car came to a stop in front of an abandoned warehouse, its windows shattered and its walls covered in graffiti. The rain had intensified, drumming against the roof with a deafening roar. The man turned off the engine and turned to face me, his grotesque mask still hiding his true identity. "Out of the car," he ordered, his voice dripping with malice. With trembling hands, I opened the door and stumbled out onto the rain-soaked pavement. The cold rain soaked through my clothes, chilling me to the bone. I glanced around, desperately searching for an escape route, but there was nowhere to run. The man got out of the car and approached me, his mask reflecting the dim light of the street lamp nearby. He was tall and imposing, and I knew that I stood no chance against him in my inebriated state. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a gleaming knife, its blade catching the feeble light. My heart raced as I realized the full extent of the danger I was in. "Please," I begged, my voice trembling. "Whatever you want, I'll give it to you. Just let me go." The man in the mask didn't respond. Instead, he lunged at me with the knife, his movements swift and predatory. I barely had time to react, but adrenaline surged through me, allowing me to dodge his initial attack. I stumbled backward, my mind racing for a way to escape, but the rain-slicked pavement beneath my feet betrayed me, and I slipped and fell to the ground. The man loomed over me, his knife raised high, ready to strike. In that moment, as the rain continued to pour down around us, I felt a surge of strength and determination. I reached for a nearby piece of broken glass from one of the warehouse's shattered windows and slashed it across the man's arm. He let out a scream of pain, dropping the knife as blood poured from the wound. I didn't waste a second. I scrambled to my feet and ran as fast as my drunken legs could carry me, my heart pounding in my chest. Behind me, I could hear the man in the mask cursing and giving chase, but I pushed myself to my limits, desperate to escape. I stumbled out onto the main road and flagged down a passing car, my clothes drenched and my body trembling with fear. The driver was a kind stranger who called the real police, and they arrived moments later, taking me to safety. The man in the mask was never found, and his true identity remained a mystery. But the horror of that rainy, drunken night still haunts my dreams, a reminder that evil can lurk in the most unexpected places, even on a dark and stormy night when you least expect it.